surprise, I think I worked out the audio issues. So hopefully I sound okay. I had like all kinds of problems with OBS, so now I've got stuff set up properly. So it should just be one audio feed, and I just sound like a normal human instead of a robot. But we're gonna do some more comic coloring. I left off with this page of the Skeleton King on the throne. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. This one's really rough. Like the flatting on this one is really rough. It's very like the colors aren't correct yet. So I'm just gonna kind of like workshop it a little bit. But the ideas are there. But yeah, somebody tell me in chat. Somebody tell me in chat if the audio sounds okay, because I spent a little bit of time trying to figure that out. Because the last stream I sounded like a robot. But yeah, I'll stream without music. I highly recommend lo-fi hip-hop on a second tab. Sort of, you can balance the levels yourself and get that chill vibe going. I was trying to get music set up, but I don't know. It's so hard on YouTube. Like your stuff gets totally like knocked for copyright, and you just get taken offline. It's like much less forgiving than any other platform. So, I'm just gonna stream without music for now, so I can like. I might at some point stream with my own music library that I've made, because I also make music. But it's not exactly chill late night vibes. It's like either pretty intense dungeon synth or pretty intense John Carpenter-esque synthwave. So we'll do that at some point, but maybe not as like a late night stream. So yeah, we got our Skeleton King here. I was working on him, trying to like put the base in as this light blue, which I'm still not sure is working. I might actually, let's just start there. Let's make a new option for him. And I will go back to him just being like bone white paper texture. And that will allow us to take the background to a more saturated place, which I think could be really good. I mean, it's interesting. Let's work with this. This is like a more interesting starting place than we were at earlier. We just have to figure out what happens down here, because now all the blue, before there was like a really cool drop off from this like tan to light blue. Hello, welcome. I'm glad you made it too. Sort of a surprise late night stream. Again, tell me if the audio sounds good. I think I set up the OBS properly this time with like the correct number of audio inputs. Hi Rascal, welcome. Yeah, I'm kind of new to streaming. Like we've amassed a decent amount of followers from posting shorts. Pretty much exclusively shorts. Like I've gotten views into like the millions on a lot of shorts. And I'm a big fan of streaming, but I never do it that much because I don't game that much. So for a long time, I thought you had to be a gamer to stream, but then I discovered that there's sort of a whole world out there. Like you can, do your weird creative project on stream and people might actually tune in. So we'll see how it goes. Sweet. Amazing. I'm so glad, because I was embarrassed. Like I did one of my first streams earlier today, and I had OBS set up wrong, where there was like 3 different audio inputs, and so it was like tripling my voice with like a little bit of like millisecond latency. So I sounded like C-3PO. That's how they do that like old school robot voice, is it's just like a triple, you triple the track and then you just like shift them all a little bit and you get that like C-3PO vocoder sound. So that's what my whole stream sounded like. But I don't know. Look, I'm a visual artist. I'm new to OBS. We're figuring it out. Ooh, that's cool. All right, I already like this better. So I think the secret to this panel is going to be to embrace color and to have it fade from purple to light purple to blue, back to light purple, back to dark purple. So I think it's going to be paralleled. I'm going to parallel it on from top to bottom. So there'll be like symmetry essentially in the color fades. So we'll set one up here. See, the hard part is going to be preserving the blue in the middle. And then we're going to do another fade with the darker purple, which I can't remember what it was. I'll just sample it. Oh, is it that dark? Whoa, okay. I didn't know I went that dark, but okay. Let's see how it looks. And we'll just, see, that's too dark. The problem is the bottom can't go as dark as the top. The top is designed to go darker because, first of all, there's, I'm doing good for a new streamer. Thank you, Rascal. I appreciate that. Like I said, I watch a lot of streaming. I sort of understand the vibe. Like I sort of understand the what you're supposed to do. So we're working on it. I actually watch. This is really embarrassing to reveal about myself, but I watch almost exclusively Super Mario 64 speedrunning. It's like one of my favorite things to watch. I'm like a big like speedrunning fan. And that's like probably something I shouldn't admit because I'm sure that people are going to think like, I don't know. There's like some really weird people in that scene, but I love it. And it's my favorite game as a child. So it just it takes me back to like a nostalgic, calming place when I watch like Mario 64 speedruns. So I'm kind of trying to bring some of that calming vibe to like art streams because I think that's why people tune in. I don't think people tune in to see me like get all hype. All right. Yeah, so I have to be careful with this one because I really liked the idea of visual parallelism from like the top fading down and then fading back into the same dark purple, but I've sort of set this page up so there's this like dark foreground rock formation that I really want it to be dark. I'm like upset. For those of you who have seen my coloring before on Interdimensional, which is the series that we do, I do a lot of like a ton of like foreground like shading. I've even made like tutorial videos about it where like objects, your instinct is when objects are close to the camera, you make them bright because you think like, I don't know why, but you think that objects that are close to you would be better lit. But I am obsessed with this idea of like, I don't even know what the correct term for it is, but you see it a lot in like, for example, like the Dune movie, where if you're in a room, especially a circular room, there's like a spotlight in the center and objects in the center of the room are the most well lit. It's a very cinematic look. And as you move away from the center of the room, there's like fall off and things get darker. So if you place the camera here and the brightest lit thing is the Skeleton King, then everything, including stuff that's close to the camera, which is in that shadow drop off, would be darker. So it actually helps give the sense that the foreground is close to you while also not being distracting. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make sure that this bottom part is all dark. So you perceive it, but you don't notice it. The first thing I want people to see is this Skeleton King. Oh yeah. It was one of your shorts. Dude, Russell, that's so cool, man. It was one of your shorts that had this page in it and the crazy psychedelic transcendence art. Is that the like pink face? This one, right? Wait, hang on. So I've got this page that's like I put everywhere. It's this one, right? It's like the transcendent face with the third eye. Yeah, this one is like this one I've put everywhere. I think this page attracted a lot of people to our comics, even though this is actually a pretty unique. There's not very many pages that look like this, but that's on purpose. Like we wanted to have a sequence that was very different from the rest of the book. Most of the book looks like this, which is sort of like Akira. I mean, obviously Akira's an influence, but like classic 90s manga halftone shading. And then the other parts of the book are what we're doing now, which is the sort of like primary colors, yellow ochres and oranges and purples. But this sequence is supposed to just be wild and weird, and it's just like a brief part of the comic where it's sort of different. It's a different vibe, sort of a tripped out vibe. And what I'm trying to do with the rest of the pages that a lot of people don't really understand how much of like modern comic coloring is actually very bright and saturated, and it's tricking your brain into not thinking that it's as saturated as it is. A lot of people who color comics, I think, especially these darker scenes with the skeleton vibe and the bones, and it's like a bone throne. You think that this is like really dark subject matter, so the colors should all be grays and browns and desaturated. Like you think it's Dark Souls, right? But if you do that to comic pages, you've got black line art and you've got sort of gray desaturated colors under it, and it just makes your whole book look really like, wow. So I'm trying to kind of show with a lot of this color palette, especially in this new book, that you can have those kinds of moments of like bright color, and it can still feel, the subject matter can still be dark. You know what I mean? Like it can still be horror, creepy, like uncomfortable, but and it can be really saturated. And a lot of the influence for that, at least on me, is like 70s movies. Like if you watch the 70s version of, or I guess it was the 80s, right? The Shining, the Jack Nicholson Shining movie. It was shot kind of before modern color grading. And I think if you made that movie now, they would really manipulate the colors, and they'd probably desaturate it. But because it was Kubrick and he was obsessed with like cinematography, the whole thing is so weirdly rich. Like there's a lot of like oranges and burgundies in that movie. So the film version of The Shining is actually like one of the biggest influences on the coloring of this book in particular. So that's a fun fact that I haven't talked about before in our content. But a lot of this book is very Stephen King inspired. His writing. I've talked about Stephen King's short story collections being big influences on my writing and the writing of this book. Night Shift, different seasons, stuff like that. And of course The Shining. But the film adaptation of The Shining was a huge inspiration on the color palette. It's like a weirdly saturated film for as creepy and dark as it is. I always thought that was super powerful, so I wanted to bring that. That's why you see over down here on the left, you can see my color palette. This is the bottom, 7, 10 are the carpet in The Shining. It's that famous like hexagonal or octagonal, whatever it is, carpet in the Overlook Hotel. So there you go. Inspiration can come from anywhere. You guys work on line weight is beyond me. Yeah, that's all Lydia. So I'm just coloring Lydia's art. Lydia and I have known each other since we were 8 in 2nd grade. She's the actual illustrator. She does everything on paper with brush and dip pen and India ink. And I have the immense privilege of actually coloring her work, lettering our comics. I basically get to take, I talked about this before, but in my opinion, I genuinely mean this, not just because we're friends, but I think she's one of the most underrated comic artists working today. I think she's totally undiscovered, and I think it's like wild that I basically get to color her work and that she gets to draw my scripts. You know what I mean? Like that's like a pretty insane feeling. I genuinely am not just saying this. I'd put her work up against pretty much anybody working, but of course I'm biased. That's not to say I don't deeply respect a bunch of legends, and I'm not saying our stuff is actually as good as like Legendary Comics, but as far as her actual ability to render stuff, her flexibility, I can write anything and she can draw it. And that's, I think, a skill that people don't really talk about a lot. Like certain artists get stuck on certain styles, and we do an anthology book where this stuff is completely, like she doesn't have to stick to one style each issue. It's always a new short story. So for me, I can write anything and she has to draw it. You know what I mean? Like, that's an amazing feeling. So this is the palette over here on the right that I'm starting to try to replicate, but I want to make it a little bit more, a little bit less bright. So over on the right is page 3 of the book. We're doing page, I don't even know what page this is, like 26, I think. Yeah. So I'm jumping all over the place, but I'm trying to kind of use the same palette on the left and as I have on the right. But I want it to obviously be a little bit darker, a little bit more atmospheric, but I still want to use all these saturated purples and blues and yellows and everything, because I want this world, which is essentially like the dream world, when they enter the dream world, I want it to feel united and cohesive, saturated but atmospheric and dark. So that's what we're trying to do. Let's see. Okay. So I like what's happening. I think this is going to work, which is that there's the gradient, the fall off, and then the dark foreground. Let's actually finish doing the peaks up here in the front. Yeah, that's cool. Gosh, you put so much detail into this stuff, man. That's the part that's tricky, is like, how do I do justice to this amount of detail? Like, I just noticed how many different snakes she put. I mean, this is full Junji Ito right here. I mean, this panel, this part of this page alone, right? You can see our influences. This is a Captain America boot, so like retro American comics. And then all these bugs and centipedes and stuff is like, to me, is so Junji Ito. And that's like where I just love, like, that we're playing with two different styles, mashing them together. I think that confuses a lot of people. People think that manga is not comics. Like, they'll say like, well, I like manga, I don't like comics, I'm not going to read your comics. I'm like, bro, it's all pictures in order, man. It's all like, we should all be influenced by it. And that's why this book actually jumps between black and white and color, because it's quite literally me trying to tell you, the reader, like, hey, these are two worlds that we appreciate and embrace. You know what I mean? It's like a very explicit, almost like, I mean, you can't be more overt than that, right? As having like some worlds in the same story be shaded in black and white and some be color. Sort of a statement about what we're influenced by. Okay, so let's get the throne in here. So the throne, maybe I want the throne to stay the way it is with this like light blue to light purple transition, and maybe I actually want to work on the background. Let's do that. Let's do that. Have you ever run into the issue where you scan original art, make the white transparent, but there are small microscopic areas that didn't go transparent? Yeah, you mean like where there's still like little white pixels in the, like, if I were, here, let me turn off all the colors. You're talking about like when you get to this stage and it looks okay, and then you start to actually like color stuff and you can see there's like white pixels still stuck in the art. Usually that's from probably your threshold not being set correctly. So when you scan your art and you bring it into something like Photoshop, you want to go into threshold and actually, like, when you play with this, when you have a black and white file and you play with this threshold, it'll start to kind of like give you super fine detail in those stair steps of your line art, and it'll start to correctly, like, you can dial in like exactly all the black is selected, and then you can delete it out. So that might be, your threshold might have been too high. I don't really know how to, I'm not like particularly technical That's that's why we self-publish, because I don't always know exactly what I'm doing, but I can describe sliding a thingy around. Yeah, my color theory's on point, eh? Yeah, I think respecting the line art is like a huge... That coloring is weird, man. It's like, it's hard to describe the skill or what the art form actually is unless you've done it a decent amount. I think it's sort of the thing I always compare it to is being a film editor. A film editor has to respect the vision of the director. It has to respect the cinematographer. You can't chop up a film and try to make a new film. When you're a film editor, and I do a lot of editing. When you're a film editor, you have to sort of like correctly assemble the piece. You can infuse a lot of style in it. Don't get me wrong. But you have to be respectful of the vision, and that's kind of what being like a lot of people don't realize that, like, I mean, that what they say about editing is if you've done it well, nobody knows you were there. It's the ninja art of filmmaking. Comic coloring is a lot like that. Like, you should never have people really notice what you did. A lot of it is understanding where Lydia's vision was in terms of where the detail of the page should be, where the focus of the page should be, and trying not to like overdo it. So a great example of that actually is that obviously the Skeleton King is the focus of this page. But she puts a lot of detail in, right? So she's got like this funny like 7-Eleven Big Gulp cup. Shout out 7-Eleven, sponsor us. This like soda cup basically with this like hilarious logo of like the king with the crown. And I think the temptation would be like, oh, that's a funny Easter egg. Like, I'm going to color that white and like really make it pop so people see the joke. But her intention was not for this to pop. Like, you know what I mean? Like, her intention from just the composition of her vision of her drawing is that it's about this guy leaning forward and this person sort of cowering below him, right? So I have to understand as the colorist that like that was her intention, was not to make this pop. And I can't fight what she was trying to do. And I think that's really important. And if you do it right, nobody knows that, you know, like people only notice it if you do it wrong. It's sort of like an interesting thing to kind of like come to terms with. All right, I'm trying to understand where the edges of the throne are. Oh, see, I got it wrong. This is where I'm kind of feeling out where the line art is. So what I didn't realize is the throne is, the edge of the throne on the left is this grouping of, like, I guess they're skulls. So I have to, again, I have to sort of follow her original line art. So there's like a bone. Yeah, there's a skull here, and then the throne is here. And sometimes you'll see me flat stuff in. I'm doing flatting right now, or sort of roughing in shapes. Sometimes you'll see me do that with the pen tool. For those wondering, this is Photoshop. This app is Photoshop. High mixed feelings. Thank you. I'm glad you think it looks awesome. It's going to get way, way more awesome. For those who have just joined and maybe don't know my work, right? This is like I'm doing flatting, I'm roughing things in. When things are done, they, you know, are much more developed. This one's not even done, but like there's a lot more like contrast and shading and rendering and detail. So this one is going to get there. It's just going to take us a long time. But yeah, sometimes I'm roughing in things with the pen tool, and sometimes I'm roughing in things with the brush. It just kind of depends on what I'm trying to do. Usually when it's like a really large area, I'm trying to just use the pen tool just to knock it out. And I can go back in with the brush and like get the fine details back. Okay, so again, we have to figure out where the edge of it looks like the edge of the throne. Man, I don't know where the edge of the throne is, man. I think I had it right the first time. Whatever, we'll figure it out. This is the joys of working with an artist who's this detailed. Is it's quite literally sometimes like I'm having to figure it out as I go. Yeah, I think I was right the first time. I think I got the left side wrong, but whatever, we'll figure it out. I'm just trying to kind of get the shape in so I can start to play with different color gradients on it and then start to understand what I'm actually doing on the page. Yeah, this is Photoshop. Lydia and I started making comics so long ago. I mean, I think 21, no, before. I mean, I've been making comics since I was like a little kid. Just like drawing on notebook paper. But I started learning how to do comics seriously in like 2001, 2002, and at the time, the only software that was available was Photoshop. So that's what I know. That's what I learned. Now there's a lot of options. You don't have to use Photoshop, but it's what I know. I try really hard not to like make specific tutorials about Photoshop because I don't want people to think you have to have Photoshop to do this. I really do think that anything works, and in fact, I encourage people to do comics traditionally if possible because it's a skill that's lost, and it can make you think differently. It can make your brain work differently. All right, so let's try to put the throne in. I want it to be more blue. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. I really want it to pop. I'm going to start to push the background more purple. And so I want the throne to be blue. We'll fix parts of it later. So now we can go into the background and start to see what it feels like to push it more purple. Oops. Yeah, see, that's nice. That's going to start to pop really well. It wouldn't be our comics. It wouldn't be interdimensional without purpley rock formations. It's like something we do all the time. That's kind of cool. It's starting to work. I did a video called Line Check. Hi, actual Dracula. Good evening. Good evening. I didn't know the actual Dracula was going to be here wishing me good evening. That's like such a thing that the actual Dracula would say. Good evening. How did I get into making comics? Well, I've literally been making comics my whole life. I started reading Calvin and Hobbes in 1995, right when it actually, I think it's ended around then. And I found out about it and made my parents buy me all the collections. And so I was obsessed with Calvin and Hobbes. I was obsessed with Tracer Bullet and Spaceman Spiff especially, and then I learned that those are like Bill Watterson doing sort of an impression of like more like serious comics, and so I like asked Spaceman Spiff led me to get into like more superheroes, and Tracer Bullet led me to get into like more noir detective-y stuff. All right. Let's do some multiply action. A lot of comic colorists are not super pro multiply, but I use it all the time. I'm going to start roughing out the shading of these bone towers, and I'm going to do it on a multiply layer. Bone shading. Yeah, children of the night. I love how the original, like Bela Lugosi, I think he's a Hungarian immigrant. They were just like, that was just the accent that he had, and they were like, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's our Dracula. And now it's like the accent everybody does. But I think it's a Hungarian accent, isn't it? Actually, those old Universal monster movies, I have a tattoo of The Bride of Frankenstein. Those old Universal monster movies are like a huge influence on me as well in my coloring. I did a short a long time ago, like a year ago, about doing that like Universal monster underlighting in black and white. And that was like super cool. Like comics is such a good medium for recreating that kind of like noir lighting of the 1930s. Because you already have the really heavy black line work, especially when Lydia's working in brush and she can like get these super dark chunks in. So Frankenstein, the original Wolfman, Dracula, like those original 30s monster movies, the Universal monster movies are like a really big influence on my coloring or shading, I guess you could say. I don't know if this is working, but we're going to try to rough it in. So I'm assuming all the light is coming from... yeah, where is the light? That's a good question to ask yourself. Where is the light coming from? Because this one's tricky because it... I mean, technically the light is probably coming from below because Lydia's put so many of these like heavy lines in heading towards the top of the frame. But I also think that if you made the whole thing underlit, it would be a little difficult. I'm kind of creating a false double light source here. I mean, I don't know. We could try something, which is that we can pause on shading it this way. You can see me figure this out in real time and see what it feels like to do this correctly, which is that it would be underlit. This would be lighter. So we'll do maybe like a gold light coming from below. So we'll do a color overlay of like this yellow. I don't know, man. It's pretty wild. Yeah, no, this isn't going to work. But I will try to put some sense of underlighting on here and see how it looks. Yeah. Transylvania is Romanian, but Bela Lugosi was Hungarian. Yeah, that's right. I recently was like, I think it was like a podcast or something, and it was about his sort of rise as an actor, and it was super fascinating. I mean, he basically, at the time, there was not a lot of ways he could have found work. He had a very heavy accent. He was an immigrant. I mean, it was a different time. And Dracula was like a really interesting way for him to sort of find his place. It was a really inspiring story. And then, of course, he was really upset because he got typecast for the rest of his life. But I think he later in life like learned to at least see it as a positive. But it is a shame that he didn't get to kind of like show more range. All right, yeah, so this is where we have to be careful that we don't go too crazy. I'm going to switch the brush to maybe like 40%. And the danger here is to get way too detailed on this background. Because what I could do is I could take all these like craggy stone lines that Lydia did, and I could like follow them really obediently, but I think you're going to spend hours doing that. So I think we have to embrace sort of a little bit of sketchiness. So I'm going to just try to suggest them in here. This kind of stuff doesn't always look good at first, quite honestly. You have to sort of trust the process a little bit. It's sort of helpful that I have a background in fine art, painting, especially like acrylic painting. There's a lot of trust the process there where you you do a lot of underpainting layers and you start to sort of figure it out as you go, and then it all comes together at the end. Yeah, you want to leave the focus in the middle. I agree. That's why that's why this page is going to be a struggle, honestly, as it's not the detail as much as it is the maintaining the focus. Like, I think I might have to actually look up photos for reference to really get this right. But again, I think it's that there's light hitting him in the middle. That's the only, and it's reflecting off of him and up. So that's why there's shading up top, because it's actually, there's like, he's throwing up some light upward, but he's almost the light source in the room. I think that's the secret, is you got to color it, even if he's lit by another source. I think the way to think about it is that if you were going to light a skeleton in a dark room, and you really hit him with like a really high amount of light, like from a cinematography standpoint, he would reflect a lot of that light too. So I think if you think of it that way, I think it makes sense. So I think that's why you're going to get sort of this dual shading on the bones, because some of that light is going to come from above, from the light that's hitting him, and it's going to cast shadows downward, and some of that light is going to be reflected back, and that's going to cast these like sort of upward shadows, and it's going to give you this drop off up top towards dark. That's my theory, at least. We'll see. Part of doing this, it's very vulnerable actually, is like sort of revealing the process live, and you'll see like how much I don't know when I start. I'm just trying to kind of figure it out. I'm going to move this panel up. That's cool. So what happens is I'll turn off the lines. You get this kind of like watercolory effect, and it looks kind of garbage. But what you can do is, once you've got it all in, you can go in with texture brushes and more gradients and halftone brushes and stuff like that. And you can really start to hide the harsh lines, the digital lines. But you just gotta kind of get the like color in first. Yeah, it is. I made a video about this, like, and a lot of people who aren't artists got really kind of like weird in the comments, like angry. I was talking about how there's so much work. You have to sort of, if you're going to do this, you have to sort of accept that there's so much work that people don't appreciate. That I mean, even if you're a detail-oriented reader or you're an artist yourself and you're going to stop and savor the detail, you're not going to spend as much time reading this work as you are making it. So even if somebody looks at this page for 15 minutes, which is like pretty unlikely, right? Like that would be insane, but it's possible. Even if they look at it for 15 whole minutes, like how long have I spent coloring it, you know? Sort of coming to terms with that is kind of an art in and of itself. But in the comments, there were a lot of people who I think weren't artists who were like, basically like, stop whining. You know, like, who cares? That's your problem. I was like, all right. I was just kind of exploring my feelings about it. I wasn't saying, that I hated it or that it shouldn't be allowed or something. Yeah, I agree. Pinhole light in the top coming down like a cone. It would then be dark at the very top and lighter towards the bottom. Yeah. It's a cone-shaped spotlight. Yes, that's correct. It's exactly what it is. The light source is essentially, I think you're totally right. The light source is obscured by this panel. Like if this panel weren't here, you might see this like pinhole light in the top of this like tower. The cone-shaped light comes down. There's drop off all around the round edges. The light hits him, and some of the light is reflected back. So it's actually a single source, light source, but it's like a complex shape with reflection. All of that is just me trying to sound smart, but I completely agree with you. So I think we're on the right track. And I think it is smart to do stuff like have it drop off in the background to a darker color where these purples are. And we'll figure it out. So you'll see that even though I'm on a multiply layer, I'm not getting enough contrast with the purple up here. So we'll fix that, because even though it's on a multiply layer, I mean, you can barely see the difference between what I'm doing and the background. So I want to fix that. I want there to be more contrast, but we'll get there. Let me just finish getting the shapes in. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be careful not to put too much detail in. I used to put too much detail in my coloring, and I realized that it was being lost on everybody. But I do think that there's a sense of craft that even if you don't fully perceive, you subconsciously perceive. I think that matters. It's also nice that I get to letter the comics, so even if you don't notice my color work, you might read my dialogue that I put in. That's nice. All right. It's pretty wild, man. I hate the color of his boots. We gotta fix that. I mean, I actually weirdly like it. Like, if more things start to be red, it might work. I actually weirdly like it when it's not trying to be dulled and it's like bright red. It's the cover of Interdimensional 3, which is, I'm kind of mirroring her exact color palette on him. Or basically like when I first flatted her out, her boots looked insane. But as I added all those warm tones to the top, sort of that mirroring of tones really like made sense. What are we at, by the way? Ooh, did we break 23K? Let's go. 23K. Dang, man, this is wild. Like crazy reception for like a small comic book publisher. All right, let's see. All right, so we'll get some. Yeah, I think that the boots standing out are. I think the boots standing out are actually like key, because it's not really about the boots standing out. It's about him as a whole standing out. Like I really want him to, and I can always go back in with purples and blues and sort of like tone down parts of him, especially in the shading. But I think that the boots standing out is actually representative of how this should feel. I mean, you can already see how much your eye is drawn towards him when the boots are red. So we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to prematurely start to show how to get some contrast back. So this layer is our shading layer. And I like how much contrast there is around here in the middle. But as it gets up to the top, it's too dark. So I'm actually going to select it, and I'm going to like go in with a darker color on a gradient. And I'm going to try to make it darker, make the shading layer darker towards the top. Did that work? Oh, it kind of did, yeah. Yeah, it did. So that's... Yeah, that's before. And that's after. I might have gone too far in some places. Before... After, yeah, I went too far. Let's try that again. We have to be careful. It's really weird, man. You have to be like light touch on some of this stuff. I just want it to be darker up top where there's all these lines that Lydia put in. Maybe a little bit. Yeah, there you go. How's that? Line check. I don't know, man. It's kind of... It's kind of a little much. Try to get some of that. I want the bottom part to be a little lighter. Maybe we'll just do an old school layer mask. To be really delicate with it. I'm going to set it to like 10% brush and just try to kind of like soften some of this stuff. Because I want the shadows, I mean the lines are off, it looks insane, but I want the shadows that are on the bones to be a lot darker. Yeah, that looks better. I really want there to be a fall off from top to bottom. So just like kind of bring some of that back a little bit. Okay. It's cool, man. This page is, again, like I didn't even realize how clever Lydia was until I saw what the colors start to do, which is that this center top panel has essentially a drop shadow behind it. Like it looks like I put a drop shadow on it in Photoshop. Because it pops so much because all this cavern shading like makes it pop out. It's really cool. Was I right? Yeah, I was definitely right the first time. We'll fix that. Currently working on a high school project due tomorrow. If you're in the Eastern time zone, you're definitely up late doing it. I used to pull all-nighters all the time for school. It was so bad. Like I just never slept when I had a project due. And I am not young anymore, so I can't do that all the time. But hopefully it goes well. Hopefully it's for art or something fun. Actually, no. Staying up late for an art assignment in high school was awful. Because it was like, I took actually like pretty intense art classes in high school. Like we were doing like actual painting, and you'd have like a concentration due at the end of the year. And it would be like, you know, you have 6 oil paintings due at the end of the year. And they all have to be like amazing. And if you were like staying up late, like in your room in high school with like oil paints, oh my God, it was horrible. Like the fume, you're like, my parents would come yell at me because I was like up late painting, and the fucking whole house would smell like oil paint, like varnish. So I would actually much rather be up late, like writing a paper or something. You're just on your laptop typing. Although I guess people don't write papers anymore, right? You just get ChatGPT to do it. GPT-4. All right, well that needs a lot of love, but you can sort of see like how the background might start working. It is for art. I hope it's not paint, man. Staying up late working with paint is so stressful. You have to like clean up after you're done, or it like hardens on all your brushes. Oh, that's a good question. John Mendoza, when coloring, do you ever account for how it will look on different devices? If so, how? I'm watching on my phone and just checked on my computer, and the purples all look completely different. Yeah, so I don't account for how it looks on different devices, to be honest. I have a pretty decent display, like I'm on an iMac with a Retina display, and you know, their displays are known for being pretty good. I don't have it like amazingly color corrected, but and I'm sure it looks different on a phone. Or I've heard actually that like the new iPhone actually has like an amazing color true display. Like I'm not sponsored by Apple, but somebody was telling me that like because my friend works in cinema grading, like he does grades for like movies and like commercials. So he's a different kind of colorist. Like he sits in a color bay all day and like tweaks the look of the film or the footage or whatever. So he was saying actually that like he's been checking some of his color work on the new iPhone, which is interesting. So yeah, it does look different on different devices, but at the end of the day, I mean, to be honest, our main product that we sell is printed comics. And that's a whole, I mean, there's so much small drift when you're going, even if you're working with a really good printer and you've actually done a really good job of like accounting for your file, when ink hits paper, it doesn't quite look the same. Like a good printer will actually work on your file a little bit and like do things like reduce the density to try to get it as color true as they can. But yeah, man, I've kind of made peace with the fact that if you look at it on one device to another or one display to another, it's going to look different than it does on my device. It's like when audio engineers mix on really, really, really nice speakers, and then the people who consume the music are just listening on like their iPhone speaker. It's like it's going to sound different, but if you do it to the best of your abilities with the equipment that you have, like it'll work well enough. I just do it for what looks best on my computer and what I think is going to print well. Not sure how you got the time to make a comic and get good grades. Well, I didn't sleep. If you're talking to me, that was my method. So I just didn't sleep. That was my secret. Sort of a problem. I don't know what that does to your brain when you're like 15 years old. I don't recommend it. Everybody please sleep if you're young. Probably like caused me weird anxiety later in life. More comfortable with cooler colors. Scared of warm colors. That's interesting. I mean, one way to do that, one way to get over that is just to, pick a warm palette and force you, like, if you were to use just the bottom half of my palette on the left, and you were like, you pick out like 10 colors that are all warm, and just be like, all right, this is what I do now. Just like pick 10 colors that are all warm and then make yourself a rule. You can't use anything else. And that's why I always talk about like painting by hand on canvas with real paint is like really valuable, because you even if you're tempted to try to use different colors, you're kind of limited to what you can mix up. And you can only take out like the yellow ochre, the cadmium, whatever it is, cadmium yellow, the red, and the brown, burnt umber, whatever. And you're more limited, so it forces your brain to make different choices. Man, I'm probably getting too detailed, but it's actually really fun to do all these lines. I just have to preserve these little round skulls here. Yeah, that's cool. That'll work. Once that's all in, it'll be so cool. I just have to like make it not so... Again, I'm not really trying to do this level of detail on every part of this drawing. I'm just kind of trying to get a sense of like what I can do where, like pick my moments basically, Like pick my moments to have the detail. That does look cool though. Maybe I do that all over. I don't know. This one's tough. This was one of those ones that's gonna take a really long time to like get it to all click. It's gonna look like kind of like funfetti garbage until it's all put together. It'll come together in the last 10 minutes. Yeah, steal somebody's color palette that's all warm. That's like that's definitely the move. I actually love stealing color palettes. Like that's not really stealing. Like you could even like, I don't know, pull up a frame of some movie that you like that has a really like, I don't even love him as a director, but like Wes Anderson makes like super interesting color choices, or he has his cinematographer that he works with, you know, and prop masters and stuff. Like it's very like curated, and you can take like a still frame of like the new Wes Anderson movie and like drop it into a program and sample like 9 colors off of it, and you'll have like a super cohesive palette to play with. I mean, it's not really stealing. That's like, I think that's like the definition of inspiration, right? I don't know. I might have to let this one cook for a little bit, like in my brain. I might take a break from this one. Yeah, man, I'm gonna definitely be streaming a lot more. I think it's nice. I'm gonna be doing this anyway. It's like super super cool that I could just like stream what I'm already doing, you know? I kind of want to go back and work on this one. This one, I was working on this one earlier today. I was working on like the water and fire, like the way the water and fire blend together. It's kind of working. Maybe we'll work on this insert panel actually. That'd be kind of fun. Be sort of a good demonstration of like warm. We were talking about warm and cool. This whole page is just an exact smashing of like cool and warm tones together. The yellows and the purples and the blues and the oranges. So maybe we can, I don't know. I'm like kind of getting lost in the sauce on this one. I think I need to like step away, come back to it with fresh eyes. So I'll switch to, yeah, let's do some insert panels. Or we could do the eye. This one's amazing. Lydia drew her eyelashes starting to frost up. So it's like these like feathery snow patterns around her eyelashes, but she's looking at fire in her iris. It's like unbelievable. Why does the chili look so good? Because he's actually like, the chili is actually fully rendered. Like this is what it looks like when you actually have proper passes of like highlights and darks, and there's like rim lighting with a dark edge next to it. And there's actually little like detailing in the highlights. Like this is what happens when you do something properly and you actually take your time to do it. He's sort of colored like a cell shaded character, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Yeah, let's do this insert panel. That'll be fun. So we're gonna start with the like bright yellow. I gotta get my layers right though. God, my layer organization is so bad. The joys of not working for anybody else but me. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like regarding palettes, I don't know, man. I feel like color palette, it's like the building blocks of art. You're not really stealing if you steal someone's palette, right? Because you could make anything with it. Like nobody owns a palette, you know? It's like somebody's like, you can't have this iron ore. It's like you're gonna steal my toaster. And you're like, well, it's not. It's like the building blocks of the toaster. I'm not stealing it. All right, first I gotta, you're seeing me in real time realize how poorly sometimes I get into this fugue state, right? I like drink a lot of coffee, I work super fast, and then my layers are garbage, like just so not organized. So we gotta clean this up a little bit. So this is what happens when you like step away for 2 weeks, come back to your own files, and you're like, oh, I didn't set this up properly. So clearly this layer, starting here, is the chili pepper. Okay, so it goes all the way. All right, so that's, there you go. So that's the chili pepper. So we're going to call this panel 2. Thanks for stopping by. I'm definitely going to be streaming more. Probably not later tonight, but I'm going to be streaming a bunch. I'm going to just be coloring Interdimensional 3 in like real time. Partially because we now have like 414, this is madness, 414 people who backed us. So there's 414 people that we're on the hook to. So I'm going to have to be like, we're working on it, it's close. So I'm going to be streaming partially just out of responsibility to them, to all of our backers. But yeah, thanks for stopping by. Oh man. How many layers do I typically use? I use hundreds. Like I actually use a new layer sometimes for every shape just because I want the flexibility to be able to like tweak. Like I want to tweak his mustache or tweak his eyeballs or just like make sure that like I have the flexibility to like really adjust things properly. And I agree. I think you're absolutely right. I think layer grouping is more important than labeling because at least even if when I open panel 2, there's a bunch of like unlabeled things, at least I can collapse panel 2 down and know that that's panel 2. You know what I mean? Like a folder system is really all that matters, I think. So, all right. So somewhere in here is all the panel 3 layers. Is it this? Okay, so this is panel 3. Yeah, so that's panel 3. And then we're about to do 1, 2, 3, 4, panel 4. Yeah, this one's going to be fun. So it's literally just an insert close-up of what's already here. So we've got mostly yellow on her face, purple shading around her face. She's going to be right up against the blue water. So I'll sample a blue and we'll call this panel 4 background. And then above it is water. I'm glad I could cheer you up, Joshua. I know, it's a bummer. Yeah, I'm just here to kind of like bring chill vibes, you know? I think it's one thing that I'm not very good at. Like, I'm decent at making content, I guess, like editing, writing scripts, you know, but I'm not decent at like being super hype on camera. Every time I've ever tried to like do that, it's like super false. And I think it just rings false to people. So not trying to do anything other than just like kind of either cheer people up or chill them out, especially if it's late at night. And I'm going to be just kind of sitting here like hacking colors into Photoshop. So yeah, I'm glad you could stop by. But yeah, there's no set amount that I use, layers that I use for coloring. It's just kind of like as I go, I'll just need a new shape, need a new object. So there's frost. This panel is amazing. There's frost forming, just to talk through my thought process here, there's frost forming on her hair. So that's going to be obviously like a cool color. Whether it's closer to blue or closer to white, I don't know yet, because ice can be in any of those families. Then there's going to be, I've got in this panel, so we're being informed by the panel before it. So in this panel before it, there's yellow to purple drop off. The shadows are yellow. I'm trying to create that kind of like opposite color wheel vibe of like the shadows are purple, the highlights are yellow. She's being lit by this like burning crazy chili man. So I think the way this panel works is there's yellow, predominantly yellow on her to represent like bright light on her. It's going to drop off into purple for the shadows. And then over top of that is going to be either white or blue bands for those like her hair starting to freeze. So the first thing I'll do is get like a yellow to purple gradient going. And we'll use this one to start. My favorite manga My favorite manga is one that not a lot of people know, or it's getting more popular because it's getting adapted, or it already has been adapted into an anime. But my favorite manga is Dungeon Meshi, or Delicious in Dungeon, for those who know it. If you don't know it, it's amazing. It's like one of those, like all good manga, it's like a premise that sounds really like one note, and you're like, well, that's dumb. You know, like how are they going to get hundreds and hundreds of pages out of that premise? Like that's not a premise. And then actually you fall in love with the characters, and you fall in love with like the detail and the world building. It's like, but basically it's like a bunch of characters who are eating monsters as they do a dungeon crawl, like D&D style. So they like are a D&D party, and as they go, they like run out of food, so they have to like kill and eat the monsters that they encounter along the way. And it's like half cooking manga, half fantasy dungeon crawl. It's so awesome, man. They'll like kill like a goblin, and then they'll be like, here's a recipe for goblin ham hocks or whatever. It's amazing. So that's my favorite one. I also like Junji Ito. I like Berserk. I like Akira. Those are probably my favorites. All right, so that's kind of working. What color did I make the shadows on her face before? Yeah, January, right? Dungeon Meshi is getting like a proper... They've like released a trailer or something. I'm really excited. It's like, honestly, like one of my favorite things in any medium ever. Oops. All right, so we're just going to shade her face. So first, there's light coming from below, or mostly to the left. So we're going to like get some shading on her face, and then I'll bring back some yellow highlights in like under her eyelids and stuff like that. It's kind of intense. That's all right. We'll figure it out. All right. Yeah, let's get some highlights back under her face. So we'll do some highlighting under the eyes for that classic like underlighting horror. We'll do maybe here. And hang on, I gotta start labeling my layer. So this is shading. Yeah, man, we're all about chill vibes here. It's not like... I don't honestly think I could do this and be like hype, like the way people are when they like stream gaming. Yeah, so the darkest parts will get the darker purple. So we'll do like her nostrils and stuff like that. I should probably just combine these layers. I'm just combining them. Because I'm kind of hopping back and forth between the brush and the eraser as I like sort of like suss this out. I work in a very like painterly style. Kind of like treat this almost like it's gouache or watercolor. Try to figure it out as I go. And I'm like, the difference though is that it's definitely a crutch. The difference though is that I do a lot of my work through erasing, which you can't really do if you're working traditionally. But it works. All right, so here's the yellow highlight layer. Let me move this over. All right, so give her cheek back. Maybe like kind of soften some of these edges here. Except I think that the shadows would go, I see the shadows aren't, the shadows need to be darker, and they need to be like, kind of like merging with this part of her. And let's bring her eye back, because that will really help the composition and pop of this. So it looks like I made her eye almost true white before. So if you look up here, to get her eyes to pop, I actually like made them really bright. So let's try that. I don't know if that's gonna work. But yeah, I'm just like really liberal with my use of layers. I just use them all the time. I know a lot of people don't color that way, but that's how I work. And then sometimes I'll merge stuff down later. As soon as I get the eye in here, you'll start to see. Yeah, that's cool. You kind of get the composition of the page. Let's make her teeth white too. Change the name of that to bright detailing, because it's going to be, I'm going to use this on the nose ring too. Just kind of get the reflective stuff, the bright stuff to be really bright. Like I want it to be this really intense pop. And this is also a good example of like Lydia draws the sound effects in the art stage. So she's screaming no. That's like very much like a part of the composition that I want to embrace. Like I love that the word is actually coming out of her mouth, physically coming out of her mouth. So we have to color that in and make it like really pop. Maybe that's like a red or something that'll like really pop. Again, I'm just like trying to rough it in. That's cool. I want the top of this to drop off a lot more. Let's do like, I think we can go blue even. That's too much. But like creating this top right edge here being really dark is going to be like a key to making the bottom left feel really bright. It's the kind of stuff that those are the kind of tricks. Like this color in the top right is really dark, and it's not directly next to the stuff down here on the bottom left, but it gives you that sense of like intensity. What's nice too is that you can see if there's sort of this panel edge is actually like a bar. There's like a bar running around this panel. So I can normally, if this was just a normal panel with one line sitting on top of this panel below it, these purples and blues would all start to run together, and you wouldn't be able to tell these are two separate panels. But because I have the luxury of having this bar, I can start to match these two panels really close and then put a bright color in and really get the panel to pop. In fact, we can do that right now. Put it at the top. So make it orange or something cool. So now I have the luxury of actually getting these two panels actually like really similar in color, but this orange bar is going to divide them up for me. And I think it'd be cool to kind of like color this bar with the same oranges and magentas that are in this chili pepper panel. So there's like visual parallelism on either sides of the page. So I'll rough that in. Yeah, this is going to work. This is a good panel to do live because I can kind of do this one a little bit faster. You can start to see how this stuff starts to like unlock as you go. It doesn't take like a whole day. So you can kind of get a sense of like, oh, the choices you're making are like compounding on each other. Yeah, this will be cool. Once this is in, I'll start to play with the gradient on it and make it a really similar gradient to like some of the stuff that's happening over here. But an orange is a good starting place because it pops so much. I can really see how it feels to have a sort of contrasting shape running down the middle here. Yeah, kind of as if the chili pepper was so powerful as to illuminate the panel border itself. Yeah, I think that's actually, I don't know what it's called, but I do a lot of kind of like surrealist coloring like that, where I'll take Lydia's page compositions are really intentional. Like obviously this chili pepper panel 2 is the focal point of the page, and he's a light source. I mean, he's so bright. So I actually will do stuff sometimes where it's very like fourth wall breaking, where he is actually physically lighting other things on the page, even though it's not technically correct to the space of the actual world. So we'll do that right now live. You'll see. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it feel like the chili pepper is illuminating the panel border, which doesn't actually make sense. It's very like fourth wall, but it's cool. So yeah, so if it's a really strong light source from the left, so I'll shade it that way. So we'll go drop it off to red here. I'm gonna have to bring some rim lighting in to get that to work. And then I will go full yellow bright on the edges here. We'll do some rim lighting. So again, it is like this character is actually illuminating other parts of the page. It'll be really cool. For rim lighting, I'm just gonna go to 100% opacity and just, maybe I should do this horizontally. Yeah, this is going to be sick. It'll make the panel pop really well too. And it's sort of like, there's some detailing we can also have the light catching here. Just a little bit of suggestion of the rim lighting here. This is where I feel like Bob Ross. I'm like, just a little light. That's how I should talk. I should just like do straight ASMR, because that's really what Bob Ross was. He was so ahead of his time. Like, completely calming painting man, like putting me to sleep. Just a little bit of... People always say that in the comments of the videos. They're like, bro, you should do ASMR. I get 2 things all the time in the comments of the videos. And it's like, bro, you should do ASMR. And and then you sound like Psyche K. I'm like, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, yeah. Sort of working. I think I made a mistake having it fall off here. I think actually, we'll just go in with some yellow. So this is rim lighting, right? Maybe we set it to like color dodge or something. Yeah. Get it to be like really yellow. And then under it, I'll put some lighter yellow. Oops, wrong one. Yeah, it's kind of cool. It is. It's like this panel is being lit by, this panel border is being lit by this chili. It makes no sense, but it looks really cool. How do I feel about fourth wall breaking? I think it's become a real crutch in comics. I think like the Deadpool vibe is cool, but Deadpool's been doing that for decades, and it's like kind of, I don't know. I'm not opposed to it. Like if somebody can do it in a clever way. I mean, Grant Morrison did Animal Man. That's like the ultimate fourth wall breaking comic. It's one of the most important comics in the history of comics, in my opinion. I think fourth wall breaking can be cool. You just have to do it in a way that's a little bit different. I think it's just looking at the audience and being like making a joke is a little tired, but maybe it'll come back around and it'll become less tired and it'll go out of fashion, then it'll come back. Yeah. Just when Bob Ross cleans his brushes and he's like, I'm just gonna beat the devil out of it. Like up against like knocks all the stuff off the easel. All right. I think the secret to this panel is that her eye is going to be like a mirror. And I think it's going to reflect all, again, sort of like what's happening where the chili pepper is lighting the panel border. I think her eye is going to be a mirror that's reflecting the colors of the chili pepper panel. So let's try that. Like we'll do a red, we'll do a magenta. I don't know if this is going to work. Let's see. Hang on. Oh, it's almost working. And then we get an orange in there. Actually, I think her eye has to be yellow for this to work. Yeah, that'll be cool. And then we can make her iris like a slightly different shade. Let's get some orange in there. That's a nice one. All right. Let's make her iris orange. Set it to like 60% maybe? No, 50%. But that needs a gradient too to really make this work. Yeah, I like the idea that the flames from panel 2 are being reflected in her eye. And then we'll go in and take that light yellow, get really bright. We can't be afraid of color here. And we're gonna like define the edge of her iris. And we'll define the edge of her eye too, her actual eyeball. And we'll do like a big, I probably want to do this on a separate layer in case I mess it up. So we'll do an eye reflection layer here. It's like it's reflecting, the light from the fire is like reflecting in her eye. We could go even brighter than that. I think I want a full opaque brush for this, just like 100%, just like don't be afraid of the dot. What would be a clever way to break the fourth wall? Yo, this is going to work, though. Once the rest of this panel is in, it'll be really cool. Yeah, that'll work. And I could probably bring... It's going to take some love, though, because I'm going to have to be really delicate with it. But I think I can take this idea of reflection, where it's like the reflective surfaces in this panel are reflecting this like orangey magenta fire. And I think I can do that on everything reflective, which is your eyeball, the nose ring would be reflective, it's metal, and I think your teeth would do it too. So let's see. I don't know, man. It's pretty weird. What would be a clever way to break the fourth wall? I don't know. I have to really think about that. All I know is that I personally think that fourth wall breaking is a little... It's not bad, but I've noticed that people do it as a crutch when they don't know how to write like a genuinely clever character moment, or like give you a piece of exposition to move the story forward in a way that's elegant. Like they don't know how to hide story information inside natural dialogue, so they'll just have the character turn to the camera and like be like, this will be important later. Wah, wah. And it's like, it's a little... I think as long as you do it in a way that is not a crutch, like not trying to give the audience information that you don't know how to communicate more elegantly, I think it can be really interesting. All right, I want to do this no sound effect so I really understand. It's hard to make color choices near it when I don't know what the color of this sound effect is, so let me do that. So that's going to sit on top of everything. We'll just like rough it in with a brush. I'll make it red just to make it pop, just so I know what it is. Yeah, I mean, definitely fourth wall breaking can be done well. I actually, to be honest, I think it has to be, I think it maybe needs to be more subtle. I think when you're literally turning to the audience and you're like literally winking at out of the fourth wall, like that's when I'm like, did you really have to do that? But when it's like, I think when I like it is when it's like a nod. If you're like a reader who's paying attention, or a viewer who's actually like sharp, and you catch it and you're like, oh, that was cool, they like put that in for me, like I was rewarded for paying attention, you know, like I think that's the vibe that I like. How long have I been live? Not too bad. How's the bit rate? Am I breaking up? It says my bit rate isn't good. Sorry if I'm all messed up. Oops. Yeah, hopefully my stream isn't like breaking up. My internet is, like most people's, somewhat unreliable. Because I don't live in one of those cool countries where everybody gets like perfect high-speed internet for free or something. Is that a thing, or is that a myth that we Americans like are told to believe? That like there are countries with like amazing perfect internet all the time? Like I've heard like the Scandinavian countries have like amazing internet, but I don't know if that's true. Yeah, some fourth wall breaking is often the author lampshading their own insecurities. Yeah, I kind of agree. It has to feel subtle, I think. It has to feel like I think it has to feel like the characters are the ones doing it. And maybe not the author or the creator as much. But then again, that's the entire premise of Animal Man. Is that the fourth wall breaks are that the creators of the comic are doing it, so I don't even know. Okay, cool. I'm glad the stream is working. Liechtenstein is the one with the super internet speeds. God, I already don't understand. All right, see, this is where I'm already lost on where the lines are. Like, where are these exclamation points? God, this is cool, though. This is going to work. It's going to take a lot of love and a lot more development. But this will work. I don't know that I want the no that red and bright, but it'll work. Oh, I think this whole thing is the top of the exclamation point. Yeah, that's got to be it. I don't know, man. Sometimes Lydia's line art is so expressive, sometimes I get a little lost. But we'll do that for now. Put a little gradient on it. Get it a little burnt orange. Oops. Let's soften this down a little bit. Ooh, uh-oh. Danger. Okay. That red is a choice, man. So we'll soften it down a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I like it red. Not sure yet. I have to do the rest of the page and I'll come back to this. Again, this is just to get it some kind of shape in there that's making a statement, so I understand kind of like its role in the composition, this lettering. Yeah, man, it is a puzzle. It's so unlike coloring other artists' work. A lot of other artists. I mean, even like people professional artists who work for big publishers, they don't ink with her level of expressiveness. If there's like flames touching water, they'll draw what is a flame and what's water. And here I was having to kind of interpret. I mean, I prefer it this way. I think that's what makes her line art so amazing, is that there's a lot of suggestions of shapes, and you as the colorist have to go in and like actually piece together what you think is best and actually start to make choices that are creative choices. I started to get it working down here, where it's like I wasn't sure when I started what was water and what was flame, but I kind of wanted it to feel like when you see an oil spill that lights on fire and there's like burning oil on the surface, so there's like quite literally flame against water. So that kind of worked. Yeah, this no is not working. Maybe the no is a cool color. I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't know. You want to see our progress tonight? Here's where this page started. This is everything I did today on stream. So here's where this page started. And here's where it is now. Which is kind of cool. So there was absolutely no detailing on the water at the bottom left of the page. I hadn't finished the flames, and this panel didn't exist. So it's starting to get there. I don't know. It's the beginnings of things. When things are, and then the skeleton is, yeah, this needs a lot of love too. It's way too purple. I need to like really get clever with the lighting and the saturation, but we'll get it there. I'm still roughing out shapes. Secret page. Not a lot of people have seen this full page. There's the Dungeon Meshi tribute right here, where he's like eating. He's got a plate of food as he's running. He's like a bard, a D&D bard character with a plate of food. So that's the Dungeon Meshi tribute. And then this is the vibe I want. I want like fully rendered backgrounds, really kind of clever color choices, a lot of contrast between yellow and blue and orange and purple. So that's like, this is the goal, this page right here. And then, yeah, this page is a good example too of like, I've gone in on her and I've put texture that hides a lot of those like harsh digital lines. There's sort of these splotchy texture in here. I don't know if you can see that on her face. That hides a lot of the imperfections too. I mean, you can see how this is how digital it looks when I do it. It's like kind of not that good. The lines on, texture on, halftones on, suddenly sort of like becomes very like purposeful. So that's the goal. That's where we're going to try to get this stuff to over the next few weeks. Just get the whole book knocked out like this. Yeah, the no, the no needs yellow. I mean, I think you're right. I think the no needs some kind of yellow. I could be shading it wrong. I've got it going from dark on the left to light on the right. One way to do it would be to light it again like this panel border where it's being lit by the chili, and actually have like rim lighting just like there is on the panel border on the no. So it's like the word that's sitting on the page is lit by another element on the page. Like that could be pretty sick. That might be the secret. Yeah, Infinite Fur, the D&D is... So when I started making comics seriously, I was in high school. I was like 14, 15. And that exact same time, I got into D&D. And I was playing D&D with like my friends in a basement, like typical nerd group. Lord of the Rings was out like when I was in high school. So D&D is all over this. I totally... Like this panel is like a love letter to D&D. It's like a bard, a sorcerer, and a barbarian, like slaying monsters in a dungeon. I mean, it's literally a dungeon. There's literally people hanging on chains in the walls. There's like a spell book, and then we've hidden a bunch of D20s and D12s and D4s all over the place. Like, there's a lot of that. Where is one? Yeah, here's one. There's one at the base of the skeleton throne. There's a die right there. So, this whole thing is like D&D meets horror meets D&D meets Stephen King meets Junji Ito meets, I don't even know, heavy metal magazine, like Franco-Belgian comics. But yeah, that's probably it for me tonight. I just wanted to do a stream where my audio wasn't messed up because I don't know, I felt embarrassed that my audio was so bad before. So anyway, we're figuring it out. And if you haven't... back the Kickstarter, we're past 23K, 7 hours left, and all these pages are going to be in Interdimensional 3, so, check it out. There's all kinds of awesome merch. We're reprinting the first 2 issues, and you can catch up and get stickers and the soundtrack on tape, and you can get a pin of this chili guy, 3D print. Oh, speaking of D&D, we're making a 1-inch base figure so you can actually use him in D&D games. So there you go. He's like usable on the like grid map system. So that's fun. We're 3D printing and hand painting a bunch of Chili Pepper D&D figures. Anyway, so there's a bunch of cool stuff. And everybody's been super awesome. We've managed to get over 400 people backing us. 420, nice. So yeah. Campaign wraps tomorrow morning. Stupid of me to do that because everybody's asleep. We're not going to get that final push, but whatever. We've totally like outdone ourselves. And once the campaign's over, I'm just going to keep coloring and do some live coloring sessions and show people the progress, and you'll get to see this thing come to life before it gets printed. And then we're going to do a bunch of cons, hopefully next year. The East Coast, tri-state area for sure. Maybe try to get out to, I don't know, Baltimore or something. We're figuring it out, but yeah. I think that's it for me. I'm tired. I just wanted to get a quick stream in where the audio was good. Chill vibes at night, and say hi to everybody, and thank you for being here and chilling. This was super fun for me. It's like really fun to have people like experience this process with me and kind of like gain an appreciation for the art of coloring, comic coloring, color theory. So you get to see me work it out live. But yeah, that's it. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll see everybody in the next one. We're going to be doing this a lot, so thank you.